On a calm lake or lagoon, or perhaps along the banks of a quiet river, man discovered the concept of sail, a revolution that occurred long before he invented the wheel. His first sails were simple, no more than cloth held aloft. But that was enough to teach him that the wind would drive his craft faster than he could ever hope to row or paddle. The era of sail was long, thousands of years. By some curious twist of time, the world's inland waters preserved the record, the log of sail. A floating history, manifest and intact. The beginnings, middle and end, all present and sailing, certainly for the last time. The geometry of sail. All the squares and triangles man has invented in his search for the best way to harness the wind. The last sailors. Nautical history probably began on a bundle of reeds, for man built reed boats long before he learned how to make them from wood. On a wobbly, tapered raft of rushes, man discovered the basics of sail. The reed boat sailors of Lake Titicaca are the end of this beginning. Sailors in time. Not part of this century nor this millennium. Their boats, man's oldest craft, simple and ingenious. Hull, rigging, sail, even the twine that binds the bundles, are all fabricated from a single plant. The shipwright's tools, a stone, a knife, the wooden hook. With them, he fashions the reeds into a strong, watertight float. The making of a reed boat is an art soon to be lost. Once, reed boat sailors were the only sailors at home on the world's great rivers, the Ganges, the Tigris, the Nile. Four 4,000 years ago, the Egyptians hauled stone for the pyramids on ships made of reeds. The placid Nile is still a stronghold of working sail. The reed boats are gone, of course, but another craft has replaced them, the ayasa. One can stand almost anywhere on the banks of the river and see its swallow-wing sail, pitched high to catch the feeble desert wind. The graceful sail hides an ungainly craft, a snub-nosed barge which is shunted from port to port like a nautical boxcar. Newness and permanence are unknown on board. Lines are chafed and patched, sails full of holes, and the hull rusted with neglect. Breakage and repair are always expected, daily chores for the crew, as ordinary as raising anchor, setting sail. No owner willingly provides rope, chain, or paint. Every penny spent is waste, for he knows that soon the boat will be sold for scrap and the sails auctioned in the market. The Nile is Egypt's highway, a natural conveyor belt for the country's commerce, and much of it still moves by water just as it always has. The river flows from south to north, and the winds blow from north to south. It's an unusual gift of nature, a ready-made system of transportation, known and exploited since the days of the pharaohs. The Ayasas, sailing fleets, the brick fleet, the limestone fleet, the hay fleet, each with its own ports and its own crews. Their numbers are dwindling rapidly. Nearly every day, sails come down, which will never be hoisted aloft again. Yet the port of Cairo is still crowded, a dusty stretch of riverbank, disorganized and dissipated. The boats arrive and nose their bowsprits toward the shore. The moment the gangway touches land, the unloading begins. The men work more as stevedores than sailors, and for this monotonous, back-breaking task, they're paid little, fed badly, and housed in the hold like cargo. Those that can flee to the Gulf states where sailors are in demand, and every ship has an engine and power winches. For 4 times the pay, they do half the work. Those left behind grumble, but keep working. They know they are the leftovers, economic casualties, looked down upon by every sailor who has found a berth on a motorboat. Unloading 100 tons of limestone is a week's toil for 10 men. Slave ships is what sailors call these boats, knowing that they serve a life sentence walking the gangplank as beasts of burden. When the unloading ends, another task begins, raising the 2 tons of mast and sail. An hour at the winch, chanting to Allah for strength and good wind. The long, muddy river is home for the Egyptian sailor, Mother Nile. A very ancient relationship. Since childhood, he has lived on the river, drank from it, bathed in it, and fished it. The Ayasa is a newcomer to Egypt, only 4 centuries old. Its wide hull was copied from a Portuguese trader, and the lateen sail was an Arab invention. The combination is perfect, a very practical bulk carrier. Ayasas work the river from the Aswan Dam to the delta, the whole length of Egypt's spine. The sailors are river nomads who follow the trade. They are paid by the voyage, no matter how long it lasts. In a village upriver, the sailor has a family he seldom sees, if he can afford it. Another wife downriver. A woman in every port, a sailor's tradition, as ageless as the Nile. Further downstream in the delta, far from Cairo, the Nile splits into fingers, one of which feeds a large, shallow lake, Lake Mansala, some 30 miles across. It is Egypt's badlands, full of uncharted, reedy islands and waterways clogged with weed, well beyond the reach of motorboats and the law. The lake is home for sailors who fish the muddy waters and a refuge for smugglers from the tax-free zone of the Suez Canal. Who is always a delicate question. Lake Mansala shelters a fleet of thousands. Sleek and streamlined, these boats seem to be products of a wind tunnel built for speed, not work. Yet the design is functional. Distinctive form that evolved gradually, a reflection of the lake itself. The water is shallow, never more than chest deep. Hence the hull is saucer-shaped, wide and flat-bottomed. The winds are light, so the sail is large, oversized, and tall enough to capture the breeze above the reeds. Storms are few. Thus the boat needs little freeboard and no cabin. The result is a fishing boat that sails like a surfboard, a craft that is tailored precisely to the needs of the fishermen and the demands of the lake. Without exception, every sailboat on the lake has the same saucer shape. The larger boats, 15 meters in length, haul cargo, sand and reeds to the village along the shore. The port of Batavia shelters the largest concentration of working sail left in the world. The boats raft together, creating a forest of masts and yards, where the motorboat is an outsider. Traditional values still prevail. A sailor's trust and pride. A tool left on deck is there the next day, and any thief faces a public beating. A boat is a being, a gift from God, to be treated with respect. Decks and yards are painted, the sails scrubbed white. It is said that fish are attracted to a beautiful boat, and fish buyers claim the prettiest boats bring in the biggest catch. A sailor may do without new clothes, but his boat must never be shabby. 10% of his income pays for paint. tithe for beauty. The huge rudders, 1/3 the boat's length, are detached and used as dinghies. Their colors a mark of ownership. The shipyard is any stretch of empty waterfront. The lumber, soft box pine, most of it salvaged from packing cases, yet imported and expensive. A shipwright can build a boat in 2 weeks, but a fisherman must save for years. Right. The hull is nailed together like a crate, then caulked and sealed with several layers of paint. The most expensive parts, the acacia trees, the mast and yard. Each morning, the boats pole into the channel. Suddenly, the sea is alive with craft, a swarm of sail preparing for a day at sea. Long ago, the Mansala fishermen discovered the joy of speed, the fact that when properly trimmed and balanced, his craft can skim across the water like a duck seeking flight. Every morning is race time, rush hour on the lake, as everyone tries to be first at the best fishing grounds. A few moments of play before the work begins. The boats fish in pairs. The 200-meter net is tied between them, then sailed in a circle. The net goes quietly into the water. On a small inland lake like Mansala, the danger of overfishing is always present. If the nets are too fine, they could easily strain all life from the water. By agreement, no one fishes in the reedy breeding grounds. The islands are left to the smugglers and outcasts who call them home. The catch is divided into 12 shares, 6 for the crew, 3 for the captain, 2 for the boat, a half for the apprentice, and the other half to charity. The fishermen may be poor, but they know there are others poorer. The community of sailors tries to care for itself. As the mouth of the net closes, the boats come up into the wind, and the sheets go slack. The net is hauled aboard easily, as the deck is streamlined, a continuous smooth surface that can't snag lines and nets. At least 20 times a day, the net is cast, hauled in, cleaned, then folded, ready to be cast again. Each man has his place, the eldest, near the mast, where the strain is least. As always, the unpleasant tasks fall to the youngest on board, the apprentice who has yet to find his sea legs. The first thing he learns is to climb the yard quickly, right to the top, perhaps 30 meters above the deck. Then, grasping the spar with his knees, he furls and unfurls the sail. There's no other way. The long lateen yard is permanently fixed to the top of the mast. To set sail or douse it, someone must climb the yard. The boy learns because he must, the hard way, with badgering and bruises, with little praise for his achievements and the crew's unending scorn for his failures. Fishing on Lake Mansala is a slow pas de deux, performed by perhaps 1,000 or more partners, spread out across the lake, all working and sailing with the same rhythm, the pace set by the wind. Close up, the poetry fades into fact. Weary sailors at work, hauling in their nets for the last time of the day. The Mansala fishermen survive, but only because they have been swept out of the main stream and into the Nile's reedy backwaters. The lake is a haven, but only for the moment. The dam at Aswan, that tamed the yearly flood of the Nile, is gradually changing Lake Mansala as well. Streams that feed the lake have slowed and become blocked with weed. Salt water from the sea has begun to seep in, and already the catch is diminishing. Soon the fishermen will have to look elsewhere to make a living. An island paradise, where the beaches are white, the sea full of fish, and the weather is always warm. It exists. The Maldives, a chain of coral islands in the Indian Ocean. The islands form lagoons, 30 or 40 miles across, and while the surf may be pounding against the reef, within the lagoon is a calm inland sea. Location is strategic, off the tip of India, an ancient meeting place for mariners from east and west. The long curved bow of a Maldivian sailboat is a vestige of that past, a mullah, a wooden symbol of the reed boats that once came from India and Egypt and turned the lagoon into a bazaar. Tourism is the new industry, flights of sun-seeking Europeans, and keeping them supplied with fruit and coconuts has revived inter-island trade. More than 1,000 sailboats gather cargoes from the outlying islands, and every able-bodied sailor can find a berth. They work against the sun and the doldrums which often leave a boat stranded, drifting aimlessly, its crew watching the fruit rot. Every sailor owns a share of the cargo, and the men must row to their profits. The waterfront at Male, the capital, is the marketplace. The quay, a permanent auction. For luck, the sailor gives the first customer a bargain. The rest must haggle for a deal. The price of wood and coconuts changes constantly. The husks woven into rope and the meat pressed for oil. If the sailor is shrewd, the trade can be lucrative. Male is rich, the outer islands poor, and the difference can be squeezed into his pocket. The sailor's lot is better than ever. He returns to the islands proud and prosperous, his hold filled with rice, clothes, and cigarettes to barter for another cargo. The moment he can afford it, he sheds his sails and buys an engine. The fabled mechanical genii is the big event in a sailor's life, a coming of age. Each new motor launch replaces half a dozen sails, and the sailor at the helm is king, a different breed of seaman, whose boat has no moolah. Freed from tradition and freed from the wind. Nowhere is working sail stronger than in the delta of the Ganges. A huge river sweeps down from the Himalayas, crosses the north of India, then splits into tributaries and creates the world's most complete system of inland waterways, an intricate web of rivers and canals that is a country in itself, Bangladesh. 100 million people wedged between the fingers of the Ganges, Jamuna and the Brahmaputra. It is a nation of sailors, a riverine land that defies the present and exists in the age of sail. Most craft are still propelled by wind, muscle, or the current. Dozens of different boats, an incredible variety. The shapes of their hulls and sails like flags that reveal their port of origin. The names change from river to river. The sailor's slang is a separate language, its lexicon as yet unwritten. For the boatman, the mechanics of sailing is second nature. His life on board a riverboat, an endless struggle to keep his craft afloat, sailing. It's the world's largest fleet. No one knows how many boats are in the country. Certainly hundreds of thousands. And nearly all of them have a sail of some kind. There are at least 10 times as many boats as vehicles, a total cargo capacity of over 1 million tons. If all the world's oil wells were to dry up tomorrow, goods and people in Bangladesh would continue to move from place to place, just as they always have. The country's poor, more than likely the poorest. And whatever statistic one quotes, Bangladesh is either near the bottom line or on it. Even the rivers are crowded and the rules of the road always in dispute. Wherever the two rivers join, there's a market, ferries, tea shops, a truck stop for sailors where they tie up to eat, trade, or pass the time, waiting for the river to rise or fall. The captains navigate through the maze of waterways without a chart. Their map is their memory, a chain of landmarks, currents, smells, sounds, and watercolors that connect one port with the next and tell a captain how to get there safely. Captains are notoriously avaricious. For the right price, they will agree to carry any cargo, almost any amount, even if they have to rebuild their boat to get it on board. The rivers rule the country, and during the monsoon, the landscape changes as huge tracts of land come underwater. The navigable waterways double with the flood. The rivers swell into huge inland lakes, and sailors load their ships to the gunwales to profit from the bad weather. During the dry season, when the water's low, the captain's mental map is his only security. A falling river can easily leave him aground, far from his village, deprived of a livelihood, his boat idle for months. When the river turns away from the wind or the breeze dies and the boat is left to drift with the current, the crew wades ashore and steps into harness. Like pack animals, 8 or 10 at a time in the traces, they haul their ship and its cargo. Towing a boat by man or beast is as ancient as the boat itself. Before he discovered the wheel, man learned that the easiest way to move goods is to haul them, not on land, but on water. Man's first road was the river. For every kilo he can carry on his back ashore, he can pull at least 100 times that through the water. The efficiency of towing has created a group of men who do nothing else. They wait at the difficult parts of the river where the currents eddy for the overloaded boat with the undermanned crews. Towpaths flank most of the world's great rivers, worn to ruts by generations of sailors. The economic realities are grim in Bangladesh. Labor is cheap and plentiful, perhaps the country's only inexhaustible resource. A muscled man is cheaper to feed and maintain than a beast of burden, valuable only for his brawn, and discarded once his strength and stamina give out. Often men row, overcoming the calm of the current with their labor, like galley slaves, straining at the oars, hour after hour, their will to work seemingly without limit. No one beats time with his foot, for to do so is bad luck. All sailors are superstitious, and the Bengali boatsman has his own special list of taboos and omens. One should not climb on board a boat with his sandals on, play cards, or gamble at sea, and after raising anchor, a symbolic bucket of water is sloshed over the prow. On Thursdays, one shouldn't sail south. On Saturdays and Mondays, east. And on the 14th day after the full moon, one shouldn't sail at all. By fate, by circumstance, by tradition, the boatsman is wedded to the river, a serf who will always be poor. His possessions never outgrow a small cloth bag. He works at whatever task the captain can find or the river demand. If he objects, he is sent ashore immediately. If he falls sick, he will be replaced. If he breaks something or loses it overboard, a rope, or a block, an oar, he must pay for it, even if it takes months. And he becomes an indentured sailor, working only to pay his debts. His only solace is that he knows that other boatmen share his lot. He could always count on them for a meal, a place to sleep, or a free trip across the river. It's not mutual aid for the sake of doing good. It's just custom, something unavoidable that every boatman must do. They are all subject to the laws of a common religion, poverty. Land is so scarce in Bangladesh that even a pailful of earth has value, enough that men can make a living selling it, bucket by bucket. They sail out to midstream, anchor, then dive 3 or 4 meters for their silt on the bottom. Filling the boat is a day's labor. Each bucket is worth only a few pennies. But the men are paid twice, once for the silt itself, and the second time for their work as dredgers, a human chain of buckets who constantly clean the channels. The silt is dried and fired into brick, the country's basic building material. Since there's little stone available, bricks are used for roads, bridges, homes, and broken into bits to become aggregate for concrete. The silt divers are the head of the process, saving valuable topsoil from being turned into brick. Most cargoes are bound to or from Dhaka, the capital, the hub of trade, and the country's entrepot. At one time, Dhaka was astride the junction of two rivers, but they gradually changed course, leaving the city stranded near the end of a narrow arm of the Ganges. Every year, the maze of waterways changes. The flood that regularly inundates a quarter of the country guarantees that nothing permanent can be built along the riverbanks, not even a bridge. Every jetty and landing may have to be moved. A ferry is the only way across the river. The waterfront is a congested jumble of crafts, warehouses and markets, overcrowded for so long, the confusion has created its own order. The fish market is a frenetic race against spoilage. Ice is costly and refrigeration unavailable. The fish must be sold quickly in the early morning before the sun consumes them. Huge bottom fish, carp and grouper, live in deep pools at the river's mouth and are thought to carry the wisdom of the Ganges. To hook one is a chess game, a lengthy duel between fish and fishermen, and the victory becomes more important than the trophy. Wood is scarce and expensive. Each log is worth more than a sailor earns in a year. As a result, few riverboats are ever really new, built with virgin timber from stem to stern. Most boats are recycled craft, constantly born and reborn from boards stripped and salvaged from wrecks and pieces brought third and fourth hand in the market. The big expense in boat building is the fastenings, the staples, the thousands of small steel bands that literally hold the craft together. Exactly how many will go into the hull is a subject for negotiation between boat builder and the boat owner. The boat can be stronger or weaker, cheap or expensive, all depending upon how much steel is put into her hull. Each seam receives 2 rows of staples, one inside, then another outside. Riverboats have no frames, no ribs, no stringers. They're just simple, fragile hulls. Crude tar seals the hull, preserving the wood and fending off marine insects. The finished boat waits on the riverbank for the monsoon rains. When the river swells, without ceremony, it is launched with a rising flood. The working sailor, multiplied by millions, at the oars, in harness, his limbs constantly in motion, pumping, pushing, pulling. He maintains a tradition he would like to share, but he is locked into a system that keeps him too poor to contemplate a way out. River life is constant, unchanged, and perhaps unchangeable. Events and inventions have a way of disappearing into the Ganges, instantly diluted, then gradually dissolved into the living past. The motorboat is still a foreigner on the rivers, hidden by the face of traditional sail.